you're a prolific author. You wrote in all these genres. What made you decide to write children's books?
So my mother, I didn't tell their whole story. My mom is a librarian by training. She became a pastor and is now retired. But I literally grew up sleeping in the stacks. When we were in the one daycare program my parents could afford was at my mother's job. She was a college librarian where she specialized in childhood and children's literature. And when we would finish, she would take us, we would come back from the daycare, but she wasn't off of work yet, and so she would hide us in the back in the stacks. And so I would sleep among books. I still love books. I appreciate the Kindle and all that stuff, but books, you know. And so I've always loved reading. I've loved storytelling. When you're a child, you tell stories, you're a liar, but when you're older and you write them down, you're called an author. And so for me, writing stories has always been a part of how I understand the world, and the opportunity to write a children's story, and now to have written 3, is the chance to take the life I've been privileged to lead, to extract some components of it, and to help younger people who may not see themselves in the world around them, especially in the books they read. I want them to read those books and see themselves. I was talking to Mariana. It matters to me that the cover of my books is a little black kid with puffy hair. She has much more hair than I did at that age. But that when they open the pages, when they see the stories, they see themselves, they see their friends, and they see in action the difficulties they face, but also they see the possibility of, succeeding anyway.
Are you comfortable sharing the story of when your parents got called into the teacher? Clearly this was not an Erikson trained teacher, but could you share that story?
So when I was in 10th grade, I was in an AP English class, and I'd been assigned, the whole class got an assignment. And the teacher was a little cool towards me. And she would often, we differed in my approach. And so I turned in an essay. She gave me a C, which I'd not seen a C on my paper unless it was because I wrote it in there. And so I'm like, why did I get a C? And she said, well, Stacey, I've tried to warn you about this. I just think this was too complicated a story, too complicated an essay. And I said, well, did I use the words wrong? She said, no. I said, is the content wrong? She's like, well, no. But in class, you often use words that your fellow students don't understand. And I just think that if you would, you do a little less, then you could do better with everyone. Now, mind you, I'm the only black kid in the class. I'm the only black person in the room. And she was essentially concerned that I was telling stories that were too sophisticated for me, that I was reading above my grade, and that I was making everyone else uncomfortable. And I heard her. I listened. And so I went back to class the next day, and she called on me, and I refused to answer. And then she called on me again, and for the whole week, every day, I would sit in her class and stare at her. And so then she called my mom and dad. And my parents came in, and they were like, why are you in trouble? I'm like, I don't know. I told you when I was a kid I was a liar. So they meet with my teacher, and my teacher explains to them what happened, and I'd given them a little bit of a background. And my parents said, so she's refusing to speak. And she's like, yes, I need you all to tell her that she can't do that. And my parents said, look, we sent our child here to learn how to think, not to learn what to think. Your job is not to shape her so that others feel better because she is less than. Your job is to make all of them feel more than. And she's not going to speak in your class until you decide to let her speak at her level. And the fact that my parents defended me and stood up for me was an extraordinary thing. They also took me home and said, if she, next time she calls on you, answer. Because we're not disrespectful in public. But what they wanted me to learn, and what I saw in that moment, was that I had the right to fantastical words. And so Stacey's Extraordinary Words, my first children's book, was about my love of words. I think words are amazing. And I used to love to collect them. I read the dictionary for fun. And the fact that this teacher told me that I wasn't entitled to the words that I knew, that I wasn't supposed to use them because I didn't look like she thought I should to use those words, could have been scarring. And instead, for me, it was liberating.
Two more questions.
Yes.
One, in your children's books, you celebrate the commonality that kids have with also their uniqueness. We are in a moment in this world where it seems like everything's pulling apart. Are you hopeful in this moment, and if so, why?
So Eric knows better than to ask me that question. Eric and Ann have been extraordinary friends for years. I do not believe in hope. I mean, I know it exists, but that's not how I guide myself. I think optimism and hope are extraordinary tools that we need. I think pessimism is an anchor that drags us down. I try to avoid all of them. I just go with being determined. Determination is something I control. I can't control the vicissitudes of life, but I can control how I respond. And in a moment where diversity is under attack because it's scary, in a moment when equity is under attack because it's working, at a time when inclusion is under attack because it means that we actually have to expand our imagination of what's possible, then I am determined to say that we are going to win anyway. We have the right to diversity. We have the right to equity. We have the right to inclusion. And I believe that if we all hold to that truth, if we believe in our right to those things, then we can win. But that doesn't mean the other side's going to stop. And this isn't a partisan issue. This is a people issue. If you are afraid of other ideas, you will oppose diversity. If you believe that there is only so much, and if you have to share it, then you are diminished, then you cannot sustain equity. And if you can only be comforted by your own truth, inclusion is terrifying. Our job is not to try to convince them otherwise. It is to prove to ourselves that we are capable of more, and I am determined to get that done.
Okay, the last one's less a question than my favorite Stacey Abrams story is not a story I've ever heard you tell, but your mother told us, which is when you won that trip because you sold a lot of Girl Scout cookies. Are you comfortable sharing that?
Sure.
Like you're not going to say no, I know.
You gave me a microphone and a really pretty award, so. Okay, so when I've been a troublemaker for a while. So when I was 12, I was a junior Girl Scout, and I was very active, and I became, they picked a group of us to represent the state of Mississippi at the National Girl Scout Convention in Scottsdale, Arizona. Again, I was the only one with melanin who got chosen, and my colleagues wanted someone else to go, and she didn't get to go, I did. Well, my mom and dad drove us to the airport, so we could get on the plane and fly to Arizona. We get to the airport, and none of my fellow Girl Scouts are there. They changed their tickets and had gone ahead, and intentionally didn't tell my parents, assuming that I would not go because, well, I'm 12, and who's going to fly to Arizona from Mississippi? They didn't know I really did. I watched not only Star Trek, but I watched Doctor Who. I was going. And so I convinced my parents to let me fly for the first time in my life, to get on that plane and to go to Scottsdale, Arizona, because I had no idea what I was doing. I got on that plane, I'm like, there are all these people, and we are in a tin can in the sky, and I had read enough about aerodynamics that I did not believe it. And so I went to sleep on the plane, and I'm like, well, if something happens, I won't be awake for it. And then I slept through. I almost missed because I had to get off the plane and transfer, because I was coming out of Gulfport, Mississippi, so there's nothing direct from Gulfport to anything. And so, they got me to the new plane, and we couldn't take off because there was mechanical issues. I'm like, oh. Anyway, it was a saga. But I got to Arizona and got off the plane and went. I was a teenager, so I ignored the mean girls, but I made great friends with everyone else, and then flew back.
But you're being humble because your mother says in the airport, she said, "Stacey, I'm so sorry. I got to go to work tomorrow. I got to take care of your brothers and sisters. We'll go get ice cream on the way home." And you said.
So my parents, my mom in particular, they wanted me to come home. When we got there and no one was there, they were righteously indignant with me. But then they were like, "Now it's time to go home," and I said, "I earned this. I want this, and they're not going to keep me here because they don't like what they see." And I told my parents, I'm like, you guys raised me better than that. You told me that if I do my part, then it's my right. And my dad's different. My mom my mom doesn't want us to die. My dad's more like, well, if it was a good death, so. Like I told you, my dad, my father's a take charge kind of guy. So my father was like, well, if she wants to go, let her go. My mother's like, what is wrong with you? Shut up. But they did. I argued with I had a very vigorous disagreement with my parents at the airport. But they agreed. I convinced my mom to let me go. I think my mom talked to every flight attendant and staff person at every airport I went to. I think I was paged like every 15 minutes. And this is before cell phones, so I have to go to the front desk and like, yes, I'm Stacey Abrams. Yes, Mom, I'm not kidnapped yet. Thank you. Okay, so that's how I ended up in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Well, I think as a theme of resilience for this luncheon, there's no better story. I just want to thank you again, Stacey Abrams, for being here and inspiring us. So.
Thank you. Thank you all.